So welcome everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today. I'm just watching the tally of participants increase as we go on. We're up to 8, 9. So let's hope that we get quite a few people here today. My name's Andrew Savage. I'm Business Development Manager for Architecture and Design across a lot of New South Wales for Weathertex. And today's Weathertex presentation, or Webinex as we call it, is all about our brand new Archicad BIM library, which we're very excited to announce today. And we have a very special guest for you today, Christian Bursell from CAD-Swift. Welcome, Christian.
Thank you.
I'll just give you a little bit of Christian's background. Christian's been creating GDL Archicad content for 20 years, forming CAD-Swift in 2008 to provide highly parametric BIM objects for Archicad. After working in some of the most progressive Archicad using architectural firms, prior to 2008, Christian had developed a reputation with the main Archicad influencers in Australia as a talented content creator. Over the last 12 years, that reputation has extended worldwide. CAD-Swift now has an extensive range of Archicad tools that push the limits of parametric geometry and component management. Our user base, or their user base, extends to most countries and includes hundreds of companies, many of which are at the top firms within their region. That's very impressive, Christian. We're really pleased that you helped us out with this project.
My pleasure.
Yeah, so look, without further ado, we'll get started. What I'm going to do firstly is I'm just going to share the screen to show you where on the Weathertex website you will find this library. So hopefully you guys just confirm, Christian, that you can see the website there.
Yes.
Now this is our home or landing page, and you'll see here up the top, we've got this technical pull down menu. And if you go to BIM CAD files, you will find then that it automatically lands on Revit. But if you click here on Archicad, it'll go down to the Archicad files. And eventually, very soon, we're also going to have a video here, which may even be today's video, which shows you how this works. So please, if anyone has any questions today around what we're talking about, please just use the chat portal. I think only the chat portal is available to you to type in your questions, and I'll read them out to Christian and he can address them as we go. But because I'm not an Archicad user, I'm just a dumb old salesman, but I have a lot of interest in design, and Christian has very kindly prepared some questions for me. So if it sounds like I have absolutely no idea what I'm asking, I probably don't. But let's get started, Christian, if it's all right with you.
Sure.
Firstly, does the material include a vectorial hatch for simple elevations?
Yes, it does. So we've considered every aspect here. I can just share my screen and show you that.
Thank you.
Moment. So you can see there's two aspects to here. This is our standard Archicad attributes over here. The other section is the wall accessory tool. So if we select one of these elements, go into the settings, you can see we've got the Weathertex Self-Lock Colonial 300 Smooth here. So if we go and have a look at our surface elements, the Weathertex Self-Lock Colonial 300 Smooth, you can see that it has the Weathertex 300 fill type in there. So what that means is that when you do a more simplified render or view, or even document, and you want to use the vectorial hatching, you will see the correct pattern on your walls for these elements. And that's across all the different elements. If we go to the 150, you can see we're using the Weathertex 150 pattern there. So you'll get the correct view of the product in the simplified views, as well as with the texture, you get them in the renders. And
often log on again. Okay, so just getting back to this then. So what we're seeing here is like a virtual showroom, isn't it, Christian? Where you can kind of go in and choose the cladding profile that you want. And then once you do follow the steps that we just went through, it's giving you a lot more information and giving you these lovely images, which you can then use in your own renders. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. This is the virtual showroom that is actually part of the download that you'll get from the website. So you'll get this Archicad file. This is an Archicad 21 file. This content is compatible from Archicad 21 through to the latest version of Archicad 25 at the moment. And you'll have access to all the standard surface materials here. And then you can also see samples of the accessory on the left-hand side. So this will be part of your download.
Okay, so there's the surface materials. And on the left-hand side, is that showing us also wall compositions, or, you know, whether it's on a timber stud or whatever?
Yeah, so these are actual generic walls that have had the wall accessory applied to it. So if we zoom in on this element, you can see in section, that's just a generic wall that can be made up of any composite chosen by the user, and the accessory gets automatically applied to that wall.
Oh, okay, that's clever. And in terms of looking at these walls, which have already been pre-prepared, I guess, as files, how do you actually determine what's what? Like, what would be, say, if I wanted to find weather groove natural 75 millimeters, how would I navigate my way around that?
Okay, so the best way to do that is to go into your surfaces or your building materials, and there's also the composite. So if we have a look at the surfaces, when you are selecting a wall element, let's just go into any wall element down here.
Yep.
We select this, you hover over it, you can see that that's Weathertex Self-Lock there.
Yep.
Weather groove, more weather groove. There's quite a few of the weather grooves. There's three ranges of the weather groove. You've got
big range.
The classic here.
Yep. Okay. So
on.
So each profile from each range is represented in this showroom area.
Yes, it is.
Okay. So it looks like it's starting off with self-lock, and then you know, weather groove and classic and prime lock looks like it's second from the back, and then Rubik's is right up the back.
Yeah, that's the
so it looks like it's following pretty much the same as our product catalog
exactly.
in terms of grouping the different products together. And then you started talking about the accessories on the wall systems on the left-hand side. So I think you said this is one of the areas where the Archicad program probably is superior to our Revit files. Yes,
that's right. So these are all the wall accessories. Obviously, it aligns with the materials as well. And this element is applied using the design feature, the design extras. So if I just open up this other file, I'll quickly show you how that's placed. It only takes a couple of seconds. So this is a standard wall. I've got my own surface applied to that. I can go into this element and I can apply a Weathertex surface to it. So this is going back to just the attributes. Or what I can do is I can actually apply the accessory. So if I select the wall and I go into design, design extras, accessories, wall accessory, it brings up the Weathertex wall accessory. This is the only wall accessory I have loaded into this file, so that's why it defaulted to that. And in the product selection, I can actually choose my products from the various ranges. So we have all 5 ranges here. So I could go to the weather groove and choose one of my weather groove products, click OK, and then choose the side of the wall that I want it to be placed on. And there is the Weathertex product. So if we have a look at that on its own in 3D, you can see that it actually has the 3D geometry of the Weathertex product in there. Right. And you can also see that it automatically follows the openings, the windows and doors that have been placed in that element.
And so would this also have things like joiners and other accessories already kind of, is that already built in, or they get placed? I mean, not a lot of designers and architects would go to that level of detail anyway, in my experience. Generally, they just, you know, say this wall's going to be weather groove 75 smooth or whatever it happens to be, and then they'll leave the accessories and what have you up to the builder or whoever's installing it. But if you did want to draw to that level of detail, that's an option.
So what we've done here, and it's very crucial that you mentioned that level of detail that people want to include in the drawing. So the joiners, where those things are not an aspect that would sort of blow out the geometry, but there are key features such as the corner accessories.
Right.
will definitely want to be placed by the users to make sure that those corners. So if we just have a look at this in the 3D, let me just double check.
And forgive me if we're getting ahead of ourselves, but I'm just asking questions as they kind of they come to mind. So that looks like an internal corner that you've got
right.
next to
so it's defaulted to an internal corner here. So we can go into, so you can see that piece of geometry. Let me just go back.
Sure.
You can see this piece of geometry here. That's the corner feature. So we can come down and we have our left and our right edge, and we can turn
to, wow, that's clever.
The external corner large is probably what we would like on those elements.
There is a small option as well, but actually you want the small. You want
actually small for that product, isn't it?
Small for this product, yeah. So I mean, I don't know whether that's something that, external corner small.
So this is also something that we can perhaps with maybe a little fine tuning of the tool, we can limit the options as well based on the product. Based on the product,
yeah, that would be good to be able to do that. But I mean, at the end of the day, Weathertex offers bills of quantity at the construction stage or even at the design stage anyway, which marks up the drawings to show what accessories are required and where they're placed. So there are other steps in the process where we've sort of got a QA in place anyway. And I think that potentially a lot of the time, and please, anyone who's listening that wants to throw their hat in the ring here on this question, we would probably not go to that level of detailing, with corners and joiners and that sort of thing anyway. But, if you want to, and you understand the products, the options there, which is terrific. Okay, we better get on to the next questions. Otherwise, we're going to be here all day. Ken Slammett, g'day, Ken, has asked this question, and forgive me if we've already covered this, Christian, but I'm still new to this. Ken's asked, you may be planning on it already, but can you please show us best practice to import all this into our template? Will we be doing that a bit later on, Christian?
Sure, it's a very simple process and it takes a minute or so I can demonstrate.
All right, we'll have a look at that a bit later on. And Damien's asking, can you control the detail via the model view? Which I think is what you just did then, wasn't it?
The detail is controlled by the element itself. So it's not set to the model view options detail, levels of detail. The model view option level of detail is not really specific for this sort of element. So we've left it as just part of the settings. So we can go to your representation settings and control the 2D and 3D level of detail here. There is obviously the potential to assign this parameter to model view options if that's something that people desire.
Okay, but I mean, from what I'm understanding though, when he's talking about can you control the detail via the model view, is that what we were just doing then, like detailing accessories, or are we talking about something different?
No, that's an Archicad specific term. Model view options are a way of controlling the level of detail and the presence of certain elements in the Archicad model. So
people out there who understand Archicad will understand it. So let's move on to the next question, if you're comfortable to do that, Christian.
Sure.
Does the content include a building material and composite?
Okay, so let's go back to the other file for this so I can show you that. Yes, it does. As people are probably familiar, we don't really leave any stone unturned when we create content. We're not trying to create something that reaches par. We're trying to go beyond and do absolutely everything. So what we have done here, if we select this element and have a look, you can see that it is using the Weathertex self-lock composite. So this is basically the main purpose of this is to demonstrate the width, the thickness of this product and to put it into a composite. That composite, if we go and have a look at that, you can see we've applied a custom material here. But we'll have a look at the composite. So if we go into our composite settings, go find our Weathertex, let's go to the self-lock, that's the one we were looking at. So you can see it has an assigned building material. So this is the composite with the assigned building material, the Weathertex self-lock building material. And it's set to the thickness of that product, 9.5 millimeter. We then go in and have a look at that building material. Weathertex self-lock, and you can see we've assigned the typical fill types and pen types based on Archicad standards from the international template. We've also assigned a default material, which is the Eco Group 75 Smooth. That's a default material for the self-lock building material. There are also some values here that are taken straight from the Weathertex product range. So you get accurate values for your thermal conductivity and so on.
So this is the BIM information?
This is the BIM information, yes.
Okay, cool.
Once the final stage, obviously, of that is the surface. So we have, we'll go along here, you can see the Weathertex. That's the surface that was the default for the self-lock. However, when you place an element, as every Archicad user will know, you can assign different surfaces that override the building material surface of the composite. So yes, we have considered everything. We've considered the representation in all the surfaces as well for the rendering, different rendering engines. If we have a look at the surface element there. So we have a texture, and this texture has been optimized for Archicad, correct size, correct representation, also optimized for Revit conveniently. We have our vectorial hatching, so you get the correct representation there. And if we go into our sign render settings, you can see that we have a bump map of that, as well as the image. So you get a texture in your rendering, but you can also use the bump if you want to apply different surface colors, different RGB values. So for instance, all these elements are in their sort of raw state. When you paint this element, you want to provide a different RGB, and therefore this bump will be useful for when you're doing your renderings.
And I don't know if this is the right time to ask this question, but this is from Chris. Is there any way that we can adjust the colors of the different products? Of course, excluding the timber look ones or natural ones. Are we coming up to that, Christian?
Yeah, so that's basically what I covered just then.
Oh, excuse me.
So you can take one of these elements. Let's just go into the surfaces, and you can see that if we go back to the basic engine, you can see all we've applied. This is the standard texture. So it's the product in its raw format without a paint color applied to it. So you can then go in and you can change your paint colors here.
Sorry,
obviously,
yes.
it doesn't affect that texture, but you will get the vectorial hatching and the correct color for that representation. And what it does affect is it affects your sign render. So that's where we have applied this bump image, so that you get the texture regardless of the color that you want to apply to it.
Sorry, yes, you did cover that. Here's another question, and if you're coming up to this, please forgive me, from Ken Slammert. In previous attempts, I have found the design extra wall accessories data do not translate into schedules and into labels that show composite layers. Is this still the case?
The wall accessories data you can schedule. The data that's in there and how you schedule that depends on how you set up your schedule scheme. The second part of the question, as far as the labels for the composites, yes, you're right. That's an Archicad process. That's something we have no control over. If you're labeling the composite's not aware of the accessory. The accessory is aware of the composite in that it's aware of the wall and its structure, but the composite itself and the label that's applied to it is not aware of the accessory attached.
Okay. So
you can label the accessory, however, and there are ways to get values out of the accessory into the label.
Okay, so I have another one that's, can you please draw a wall with the wall accessory to show how you place the accessory and edit it? Is that something we'll have time to do?
It's a fairly quick process. We may get time to do that.
All right, we'll see how we go at the end. We might come back to that. So the next question, if we're happy to move on, Christian.
Sure.
Can you control the position of the panels?
Yes, you can control the position of the panels. So obviously people will know the standard Archicad method for controlling the position of textures. So that's not something that is specific to this content. However, it is very specific to the content that we have created for the accessory. So there is a hotspot And I think that's, you can faintly see it there. That element. Okay, so it's called the start contour. So basically you have a range of where you can put it. It'll only go one contour high. So it's basically, you're shifting where you're starting the first element there.
Which is obviously important when you're positioning your horizontal or vertical profiles, because you obviously might want to line them up with a window or a door or something like that.
Yeah, that's right. It's definitely crucial for the design aspect of this. These panels, as you would know, Andrew, are not just randomly placed on a building. Often they may be, but designers typically want to align the texture with the design. So that allows for that element.
Yep. We happy to move on to the next question, Christian?
Sure.
Does it include the corner detail? Well, we've just covered that, haven't we?
Yeah, we touched on that. So yes, it does include the corner detail. Yep. And we may fine tune this element just to assign certain details to certain products.
Obviously, when we have the overlapping products like our Classic and our Prime Lock, where the boards overlap, creating a 19mm, I guess, requirement to accommodate the two boards. That's the larger accessory, and the smaller accessory is required for self-lock, Rubik's and Weather Groove, where we have a single layer of material. And I think most people would be familiar with that.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. So you can see the two examples there. That's the larger one in the background with the overlapping, and this is the smaller one in the foreground.
Just on that one that you're showing now, you just zoomed into, this is just for my own benefit. This is showing the Weather Groove panel, and you can see that it is showing the corner accessory on the lip of the corner of the panel. Obviously, when you are fitting a corner accessory, you need to take that lip or rebate off so that the corner accessory actually, you know, is positioned correctly on the edge of the panel. So there's obviously, are there ways of trimming the panel in CAD?
I mean, you can move that that element again. This just happens to be a 1200mm panel on a 1200mm wall, so it's kind of an inconvenient example.
Gotcha.
Typically, you're not going to have it finished just like that. So yes,
but if you move it,
shift that joint around,
move it 20mm to the left or to the right, it's actually then going to correlate with the thicker part of the material. Yeah, so it's going to not only depend on the set outs, but also things like accessories. Yeah, okay, well that makes sense. Can you control the 2D level of detail? Can you control the 3D level of detail? I'm asking both questions, and you can maybe address them both.
Yeah, this is obviously crucial. It's nice to have the wall accessory that maps to the wall and gives you the thickness and gives you the proper geometry and all that sort of thing. However, it can overload the file. So when you go to elevations, you typically want to 1 to 100 elevations. You definitely want to dumb down that 3D level of detail, and the same in the 2D. The 2D can get very congested. It can turn into very bold lines where you can't see the detail. So we have taken that into consideration, obviously. So if we open up this element here, let's do it with this corner element so we know exactly where we are in 2D as well. So if we open up this element here and we go to our representation page, and we can set both of these to, you can set them to off as well, so you can turn them off completely. Probably rarely use that, but it may be useful for some purposes. So we'll set that to simple, and we'll set the 2D to simple as well. We'll go have a look at the 3D. So you can see that first thing you can notice, that gets rid of the corner detail. So you don't have any of that complex geometry in the corner. And it simplifies the geometry to just represent the one line where the boards meet. So basically you end up with a single panel that has some line work on it. So that really optimizes the speed of your 3D model. If we have a look at that element in 2D, you can see that it is just the simple thickness of that element following the contour of the wall. So there is no detail in that aspect. However, that was also, I think that was a horizontal one, so I don't think there's any detail in that ever. If we go back to detailed, sorry, bear with me. I'll bump things around, back to detailed, so you can see the
corners back.
Corner arrangement. But as it was a horizontal board, there's no 2D detail. So let's have a look at something that's got some 2D detail. Okay, so you can see the actual grooves in this element.
On the weather groove, yep.
The weather groove. And that's exact product detail. So if we now go to representation, and change that to simple, click OK, all that detail disappears. And you could even go to the extent of turning that element off if you don't want to see that in 3D, in 2D.
And would it still provide in the elevation view vertical lines?
Yes, it does. So there's different ways to handle that. So if we go, change this to simple. So you can see those lines are there in 3D. So they all appear in the elevation as well.
And would it be correct to say that designers and architects who are maybe doing DA drawings where you want to keep the level of detail fairly generic, you don't need to specify products, and depending on your client, you may not specify product, although we always want you to specify Weathertex, of course, but you know, you're just doing line, as we say, lines on the drawing to indicate vertical or horizontal cladding profile. Is that's where we're using this level?
Yes, that's correct. It definitely in the early stages, this is the way you would use this element. You'd use it in its simplified form and not worry too much about all those other aspects. You can obviously then also generate detailed drawings out of 3D sections of the model and 2D elements once you do raise the detail up for later on down the track.
The construction drawings, for instance?
Construction drawings, and also just evaluating the design yourself so you can see the detail and you can see the grooves and you know exactly how they're going to line up with your elements. So it just gives you that greater level of knowledge that you can react to.
Okay, I've got a couple more questions if you're happy to move on, Christian.
Sure.
Just quickly, Graham Dinning, yes, we are recording the webinar, and to everybody who attends, we'll send you a link to that once it's up on our website. Michael O'Connor has asked, can you control the color of the accessory separate or independent to the color of the paneling? It's an unusual request. It does happen sometimes, but is that an option if you want, say, different colored corners or whatever?
That's actually a good question, and I'm not sure exactly how I've done that at the moment. Let's go into the representation. Okay, so you've got the custom materials, so you can turn on custom materials and you can apply different materials. But at the moment, no, the corner materials, the corner element details are the same. However, that's a very easy improvement that we could make if it's something that the user wants.
Is it also something that the users can do manually on those projects where it's required? Because it's a fairly unusual request. Normally, you want the accessories to blend in with the cladding. Mm-hmm. Probably, I'd say 90% of the cases, the accessories are the same color of the cladding, especially if it's a primed product. And then in the case of our natural unprimed product, often the accessories aren't used. We use other methods rather than having aluminium trims and so on. So is it something that you can sort of just edit through CAD anyway?
It's not actually, because it's a complete unit. It's basically one piece. It has to be in the code. All
right. Well, I think we'll take that on notice. Correct me if I'm wrong, viewers, but I don't think it sort of comes up that often. And then there's another question here. Is there a batten option behind the cladding as part of the accessories, or would we just need to continue using a batten composite layer? So I guess what we're talking about here is cavity construction, whereby we would have, you know, a vapor permeable membrane or sarking sort of wrapped around the studs, and then we have a batten which is fitted to the studs before the cladding goes on, creating around about a 9 to 10 millimeter cavity between the outside of the sarking and the rear side of the cladding to manage moisture and condensation. So is that part of the model?
No, that's not part of the model. Just the front facade is part of the model. None of the structural elements in the background behind are part of the model.
I'm sorry, none of them are. So
no, so we don't have the batten work or anything behind the cladding as part of the model.
Okay. All right. Well, that's interesting. I think that's just about everything covered There's one more question that's just come through. It could be good to set the trim material separately for rendering in other programs like Twinmotion. I guess we'll take that on advice. So if you are using other programs, there might be a way of separating those elements. Is that what he's saying?
Yeah, I believe if you take it into other, well, no, what he's saying is when it comes into Twinmotion, to have them as two separate classifications makes it very easy to control those elements in the rendering package.
Oh, okay, but that would require additional work at your end.
Yes, it would.
Yeah. Adrian's asking, will using these objects add heavily to the file size? No,
these are GDL objects. GDL is an extremely efficient language. The file size is quite small. Let me just, I'm confident it's very small. We can actually have a look at that. Go into the accessory. So this is the complete unit is a 2 meg file, the accessory package. It won't increase the file size, and the actual placing the element multiple times does not increase the file size by the size of the library. It's not how Archicad works. It's actually far more efficient than that. What will increase the file size is if you take 3D elevations of complex geometry. So if you have a very large 3D elevation and you've left the 3D level of detail on detailed, then that elevation will increase the file size, and that's why you have the simple option.
Okay. And the last question that we'll take today, thank you everybody for your contributions, may actually dovetail into the earlier question, which was, where are we? I can't find it. Can you control it? Is there a button option? Can you please draw a wall with wall accessory to show you how to place an accessory, edit it? We've also got one question to say, how do you add a window? So I don't know if you can demonstrate those two things.
I'll do that all very quickly right now. So
thank you.
Let's just click OK. I'll just do it in this file. I'll select one of these walls to start with. I'll go into the 2D. Let's do a just a corner. So I've placed the wall. I'm going to place a generic door opening in here. It's quite large. And I'll place a generic window opening over this side. Once again, that is a large element. Back into that. Window must be over a certain height, or perhaps these walls are under a certain height. Yes, that window is. Okay, so that's it. That's your standard wall. Now we can select this in, let's do it in 2D. Most people probably work in 2D for this aspect. So this is placing the accessory. So you select the wall elements that you want to place the accessory on. You go into the design menu, design extras, accessories, wall accessories. You select the Weathertex wall accessory. Let's go to our product selection and we'll choose just one of these products. And we'll leave these corners off for now. Click OK. And then you choose the side of the wall that you want the accessory to be placed on. So we want it over this side. And now you can see, if you zoom in, you can see there's the wall accessory. So if we now go in and have a look at that in 3D, Five 3D, you can see the wall accessory has gone around both the window and the door there. And we could come in here and we could place, we could put a corner on this. So choose. Okay, so that's giving us our corner detail there as well.
Yeah.
Now, if we want to place another window, you basically just treat the wall like a wall and ignore the accessory is even there, because the accessory automatically responds. So if I just select another window, it's at the right height, and I place it in this wall here. That's the accessory. So here I've got to find the wall. So it's not allowing me to grab the wall because I'm touching the accessory rather than the wall. So that's why I came around this side. I can place the window in that wall. And there we have another window. Obviously, that can also be done in 2D, just like placing any other window. And there you go. So that's how easy it is to place these wall accessory elements. It's a very fast automated process. So it's a very clever tool. Thanks to Graphisoft. I think the other question that was still outstanding was bringing these elements into Archicad. So if I just go back to this Archicad file here, I've actually already got the attributes in, but I'll just demonstrate it anyway. I'm just going to delete that. Okay, so if we go to our, excuse me, can't see. Archicad bar. Okay, so if we go to our attributes, our attribute manager. In the attribute manager, we want to import another file. When you download this, obviously you go to where your download is. We're looking at surfaces here, so you're going to the surface. And this is your attribute file. So this file contains all your building materials, composites, and your surfaces. So we need to load that. So we select open. This is just a warning about it because it was created in an early version of Archicad. It's a standard warning. And we're on the all at the moment. If we see, you can go to, there's your surfaces, your building materials, and your composites. If we go to all, we can then select all of them, and we can import these into our project by using one of these functions. Typically, it would just be the append function. You can see that I've already done that down here. Let's go to one of our surfaces. So I've already brought those in to this element. So it's already there. So we click OK after we've imported that. One of the crucial things to note, I'll just select this, and I'm going to change the surface to a Weathertex surface. So let's just do Federation 170. Click OK. So that changes to our Federation 170. However, it is important for that texture to come up. You need to make sure that you have it loaded in your libraries. So you need to go to your library manager and ensure that you also load this materials and bumps folder. So if I just click the add button back into Weathertex, so your downloads, the surface, you need to make sure this materials and bumps folder is loaded, because that contains all the textures. We can't see them when we're looking at through this view, but that contains all the textures that apply to these materials so that you get the correct representation. And as far as loading in the accessories, it's the same. We just do that through our library manager, go to the add button, go to the accessory part of the download, and load in this Weathertex architectural panel LCF file. So that's a library container file that contains the accessory. And it's as simple as that.
Okay. Well, I think you've actually just answered Adrian's and Christina's questions, although Christina's saying here, in addition to attribute loading, question mark. So she said, so it's not imported as, so it is not imported as library objects, question mark, in addition to attribute loading, question mark.
Yeah, that's right. So there's two parts. There is the attribute loading, and then you also need to import the textures as the library parts. The wall accessory aspect is a completely separate element, and it also needs to be loaded as a library.
Okie dokie. So hopefully that answers everyone's questions. There is one more question, and this will be the last question for today, folks, because we are out of time. We've gone over time. But from Edward Cito, will this material object need to be updated with each annual update of Archicad?
No. So the attributes built in Archicad 21, they're compatible with all versions at the moment, and it will remain that way as far as the way they are constructed. And GDL objects are automatically forward compatible. So this the GDL object is built in Archicad 21 and will work in every successive version of Archicad. Weathertex also will do their due diligence. Sorry, forgive me. Anyway, you know the term.
Our due diligence.
Due diligence, and we'll check every year to make sure it's still compatible. But automatically, it will be compatible.
And obviously, as we release new products, we'll update the Archicad library accordingly. So thank you so much, Christian. We really appreciate what you've done for us at Weathertex and the amount of time you've given us today. Now, we do have a question. What is Christian's company called? You can tell us the answer, Christian.
It's CAD Swift. So CAD, we all remember things used to be called CAD, and Swift like the bird and like the speed. So
yeah, and you're Sydney based, aren't you?
Yeah, just south of Sydney.
Okay, fantastic. Well, that's excellent. Thanks again, Christian. It was a fantastic presentation.